Dude, I think we need a soundtrack. That'd just be epic.
Yeah.
The deal that got away.
Oh my gosh. I love listening to the fake
Hello, 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 everyone.
hi y'all. Welcome to the show. I'm Megan. This is Nick. And we want to start today's session a little bit different by starting with a fun and slightly controversial question. So Nick, what do you have?
Uh-oh. The one I found really interesting because I was kind of teeter-tottering, and I know a lot of you guys are in sales, and holidays aren't really a thing. So this is kind of a fun one to hear what you guys think. So a friend asked me if you had the choice of having the perfect house, custom designed, affordable, depending, doesn't matter where you live, they built you a perfect house, or you could go on vacation anywhere you wanted for 1 month every year. So you got a choice. The perfect house for the rest of your life, a 1 month vacation anywhere you want for the rest of your life. Meg, what side are you? I already know your answer, so.
I know. I was literally about to say, I think I did have the perfect house. I was living in a gorgeous house up like an hour outside of New York City. Literally the previous owner had artwork in the Met.
Wow.
And I chose to leave and to travel the world. So I'm like, I feel like I've already literally made this decision. But I don't know. I definitely even think before I started traveling, I would have said, give me the trip. I like, I'll take a small house apartment anywhere. That is okay. But I don't know. I think especially when we're such hard workers, traveling is key. It also gives you so much perspective. It's fun. It's amazing. What about you?
So a lot of people don't know this, but I have traveled through North America pretty extensively. And last year was the first year I actually traveled. So I got sent for work to go and set up sales offices quite a few years ago, and I did that for a few years, and I lived out of my suitcase. And so
Yeah.
they would send me on a Sunday and they'd fly me back on a Friday night, but they booked me for 12 hours a day. So they'd pick me up in the morning and I
Oh,
would stay at the facility all day unless they took me out for dinner, and then they took me back to the hotel. So I've actually never really been on a real vacation other than maybe going out to the cabin. So I
oh my
feel like
gosh. I feel like
I
that's
would
the real
have to.
question. Who here has not been on a vacation in the last 3 years? That's horrible.
You're making me feel blue.
No, honestly, that's a really good question. Like even in sales, I hear a lot of people kind of even being proud of the fact that they haven't been on vacation. And a lot of it is because what I find is that people don't feel like they, even if they like they're working so hard, and when they're not working, they're stressing about work. So
Why are you reading my diary, Meg? God.
dude, I know. And honestly, it's so true. I know you. Crazy workaholic. But hopefully, I mean, for me, what it's come down to is also just making sales a little bit easier, working through some of the things that cause us stress, which is why I'm excited to go through the situation we have today. Nick, do you want to tell people about what
Adrian, I get you.
we're
Janice, good for you. Good for taking the time. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to get away from those emails. I've learned a real interesting thing in the last little while. The world doesn't blow up if you don't respond.
I was about to
I
say
didn't know.
congratulating people on still answering emails on vacation. I congratulations to the people who literally set clear boundaries and are like, "Hello, I'm so glad that I am going on vacation." Or like have you seen the Gen Z out of office post, the way that they're like saying they're out of office? I saw the funniest one on Instagram the other day. I'm like aging myself. And it was like
What's Instagram? Keep
I
going.
was like, oh my God, I already sound so old. But it's funny because people are like, Gen Z will send out of office messages and they're like, goodbye, do not email me, Or if you need something, I will not be available. Message anyone else. And it's just these ridiculous things like having such clear boundaries. And then there's millennials who are like, "Hi, I'm actually just out of the office for a week, but I'm only getting, open heart surgery, but I will be available, as soon as I get out of surgery. Like, let me know. Just like, I'll just be a few hours." No, we need to have some clear boundaries. We need to reduce some stress. And from my experience, it comes with a little bit of strategy. It comes with a little bit of like, again, making it easier.
And plus, buyers respect people that have a life because they know that they're going to prioritize things. And when they ask you to do things, you know how to go and prioritize your time. That was something I wish someone had told me sooner. So, Meg, what do we got today? What are we up to?
So we actually have a deal that's really interesting. But one thing I wanted to say is that we actually got some feedback from y'all last week. We heard so much incredible feedback. We're really excited to, cover those deals that are going to make or break your quarter. We are going to cover those impossible prospects. But we hear that there is a little bit of sensitivity and a lot of vulnerability that is inherent in like coming onto the show, and also just like the privacy. Like, I don't know about y'all, but like sometimes we don't want to go talking about our deals live where it could be seen. So, with that in mind, we're actually going to be doing the option. If you do want to come onto the show and have your deal reviewed, we can do that. But you can also submit anonymously, or just, we'll cover it anonymously, which we're going to do today. So we have a really good deal on the books today. Nick, tell us a little bit more about this one.
So, pay attention, guys. You're going to probably want to tag a few people in the comments there because this one is juicy. So, this seller gets a lead handed down from his VP to him, high priority, marketing and give it to them, good to go. And he says, "Here's your big shot. Don't screw it up."
It's an inbound lead too. So like everyone thinks that inbound leads are literally just like a guaranteed thing.
And this one has an interesting twist that we'll get to after that really adds some fuel to the fire. Okay. Do you want me to go and give all the details now and then we'll just jump right into it? Or do you want me to go in?
I want,
Okay.
yeah, just give us all the details.
Okay, peeps, if you're in this situation where you had a big deal that was going to make your entire quarter, you know there people are watching and it's going to make everything, but what the hell do you do? Tag some people in because we're going to be discussing this and we're going to give you some takeaways. So, imagine this. Marketing sends you a high priority inbound lead. So that manager fires it off to you and says, "Here's your big shot. Don't mess it up." The seller
Like
fires
also,
off an
no one wants to get that message from their boss.
ever.
I'm already like heavily cringing.
And the thing wasn't even their boss, it was his boss's boss. So it was 2 levels up, which is even worse because he had been asking for a shot, his one
Stressed.
opportunity to seize everything he ever wanted. One
No,
moment.
so stressed.
And so the seller fires off an email, this lead, and is met with absolute silence. Like crickets in the background is would have been better than this. So he's calling, and he just cannot get through anywhere. After weeks of consistently following up, he talks to the VP. Says he has no idea what he's talking about and he didn't fill out any forms and hangs up. Now here comes the fun twist. Multiple VPs are watching this deal because nobody told him it was a strategic deal that they've been working on for years, and Iggy gets all the pressure put on him but no support. So the VPs keep asking him, "So how's it going? How's it going?" And when he says he doesn't think it was a lead in the first place, they blamed him for losing it because he was incompetent. So he goes back into the field to make it happen, as we do.
So stressed right now.
Absolutely fricking nothing. He can't get a single reply from anyone, phone, email, but he needs to show something or his head will be on the chopping block. What the hell does he do? This is a good one.
I'm, like, cringing so hard at literally every detail of this story. So, the interesting thing as well, I have a few questions, but, I'm curious from the audience, like, what are y'all thinking about this? Are you cringing as hard as we are? Do you have any questions? Do you have any, like, strategies that you would be focusing on? Let's give everyone a quick minute.
Bum, ba-da-dum,
Hmm,
bum, ba-da-dum,
I know, but
bum.
I'm curious for Nick, like, what what questions are you asking? Because I have a few.
Well, I would ask two right off the bat. What
Go ahead.
was the form? And
Yeah.
do you know what they were doing, like what their journey was before they filled out the form?
I'm, like, also, like, who was it on the form?
It was that person, that VP.
Vicky, that was like, I didn't fill out a form. That's wild.
It's very common.
Yeah. Also for me,
Garth. I'm gonna
I know,
throw this in here.
I'm with Garth. I'm like, honestly, as a sales
This
leadership
boss's
team,
boss sounds like an idiot.
it's so frustrating. Also this is okay, actually, the anonymous deals are way more fun. I just made up my mind. Yes. Um, it's so hard when we have, situations like this where people act like it's like a layup or, they're like, you're giving so much pressure without any support, you know? So I have a few ideas, but, like, I do wanna highlight that from even a sales leadership perspective, it's really frustrating when we have these situations where we're just like, "Oh, when is it coming in? When is it coming in?" Like, this is not a deal.
I wanna go and throw this in Gary's comment here. This is fun. Send them off as an edible arrangement, and I would put on the letter, you know, it's stop letting everyone else eat your lunch. You should give me a call so we can help or something, or just say stop everyone from eating your lunch and just leave your name. Let them Google you, and then
Yeah,
send an email so it's relevant so they know who you are.
yeah. I'm also curious, was what type of form was it? Was it, like, for a specific piece of content, or was it, like,
Nobody
a
would tell
demo?
me,
W Wait, what?
and it wasn't in the CRM because the CRM and the marketing portals are separate, so the tech stack doesn't align.
You're joking. Yeah,
I
okay,
wish I was joking, James. Yeah, you would think. With a
yeah,
deal of this much importance, would the salesperson make sure they had all the information they needed before reaching out? I think this person did, honestly, but got met with the typical crap of, "Oh, well, it's a needs to know," or "I don't know," or "Oh, I'll go and find out, but you need to start right now."
yeah. So, any marketers we have on the call today, like, ooh, I was about to okay, I was like, "Ooh, it's a little harsh." I'm literally just like, "Be better." Like, literally, we're doing all of this work to generate leads, especially with top prospects. Like, at my last company, I started doing what we called I've told you about this, Nick, what we called, prospecting rallies, where we would literally bring together for top prospects. We literally identified, like, 20 top prospects, at the company. Like, these are high level prospects, and we literally rallied together. We brought in marketing, solutions consulting, partnerships, all of these different people to literally say, "Hey, this is the prospect we're targeting. This is what we've done so far. This is what we know about them. Let's get creative." And one, we actually had some teams that were like, why weren't we not invited to these like prospecting rallies?" Like, as a sales trainer, it's hard to get people to come to stuff like this, but like they were so valuable. We literally had teams like arguing about like who got to go. And we literally generated opportunities with 2 out of the top 10 in the first 2 weeks. And I literally just say this because we need to be better at actually team selling and a lot, but we don't talk a lot about team prospecting. I see so many disconnections between like what like these like inbound leads and all like why can't we literally get on the same page with who we're targeting, what matters to them, what the gaps are, right? Like, just passing off an inbound lead and saying like, "Oh, here's this amazing lead." And it's funny too because what I see a lot is that, like, we just, like, get someone have any level of interest, and we're like, "It's a deal. It's a lead." And they're like, no. This is, like, a fake email address, and they actually are signing up for something t like, unrelated. They're it's not like like, hot lead, you know? That, like they're like, "Send me a demo." They, like, sign up for a piece of content or something, you know? Nick, do you see
So
this
it's
pretty often? Like, so these disconnects?
all the time, and the problem is how each one is compensated and tracked. And
Mhm.
it's funny because if you actually break it down, marketing is using TAM. So all they're doing is looking at what they think their total addressable market is, and they're just haphazardly shooting at everything that moves.
Mhm.
And then when something looks like they got a hit, they just throw it over to sales with no qualification. And
Yeah.
it was funny. One of my favorite lines to go and get VPs of sales and use this wisely, unless you it could come back to bite you. I just don't care. I always write is so if we fired your entire marketing team, would your sales notice? And it's not because I don't love marketing. Morgan
Yeah,
is a marketer and he's a brilliant marketer and he's also an incredible designer too. But the thing is, holistically, nobody looks at end to end what is the prospect's experience.
yeah, and
And
it's
so like the context, even in that list, Meg, like
yeah,
so you hand off this so what it told me right off the bat, the first thing it signaled to me when I looked at the email that was sent was this is a big lead or this is a big company we want to win. That's the context for the need.
literally that's all. Thank you. I literally have a prospecting list and a territory, like, I understand this name, you know, like and it's so funny because I do think that we also put so much pressure on sales when, like, when they're we do think that, like, marketing, like, tease it up and it's like, "Oh, this is a layup." As we figured out last week, there are literally no layups in sales. Honestly, the layups I'm more worried about. Like, if someone tells me something is a layup, I'm like, even if my prospect says this is a layup, this is going to be an easy process. Like, we don't really need that much. I'm questioning stuff. I'm literally like, I'm a little bit more worried because honestly,
Why?
like something's going to
Nothing
go
ever
wrong.
happens. It's always smooth sailing.
Dude, I have so much anxiety, and I feel like it is my absolute sales superpower. But in this case, I'm curious, okay, we can, like, talk shit about marketing all day. Let's be real. Sometimes I love to do that. But, um, we already had one of the I love, getting creative because that was one of the first things that came to mind for me, like, when things are not working with through the traditional channels, get creative. I loved your little idea of sending a cheeky message, like, what else? Like, how would y'all get creative in the audience as well?
So
Love
I'll
to hear
I'll
some
ask you a question, Meg.
oh gosh.
So after you build a good list that is your sandbox to play in,
Yeah,
what is your next step that you normally do? You don't
prioritize it.
just So if we had to
Literally the thing that, like
if we had to reverse engineer this, right?
Mhm.
How could we prioritize this?
So, it's funny because I'm literally exactly what I said, like, all hands on deck. Why is this falling on the salesperson to literally just, like this is if you're telling me this is a top prospect at the company, I'm getting marketing involved, I'm getting solutions consulting involved, like, y'all steal this freaking strategy, prospecting rallies. Literally, if you were saying that, like, the number one goal of all of these go-to-market teams is to bring on new clients, get together, get your top 3 prospects, even, like, once a week or even who cares, once a month. Literally bring together solutions consultant, marketing, you could bring someone from, like, I don't even know, like, what other teams your of course, your BDR, and literally strategize. I things that have come out of this session, like, at first, if you can imagine, there was a little bit of, like, huffing and puffing where marketing was like, "Ah, I can't believe you didn't try this or use this, this resource that we had. Like, this is so obvious. And the salesperson was like, I've never seen that resource. I didn't know it existed. No one told me that this event was coming up. Like, hasn't been announced to the sales team yet. And the magical part is the next session, though, people started coming together and to really strategize on these deals. And like I said, like, this stuff works because when we go from a go to market team who is fighting against each other and blaming, there's a lot of blame that people don't realize. Honestly, a lot of it has to do with like at higher levels, like someone has to take the be the scapegoat for missed revenue targets. And so it does create this culture within marketing, sales, all these other teams like, oh, this was a miss on this team, not us. Work together. Marketers, get on the same side as sales. Salespeople, do not blame marketers. Like, I know we're talking a little smack today, but we all need to get on the same team. So for me, I would literally, and like also solutions consulting, one of the best people to have in that meeting, partnerships as well, literally get together and brainstorm some creative ideas. That's what I've seen work the absolute best. But like, we need to stop putting this all on that seller. I'm sorry, if you're a sales leader and you're like, where are we on that top deal? Like, you're just passing on the blame. Like, help this situation. This is also your territory and your job.
I I hate to say it out loud, but this is common. And
Mhm.
so if you're going through this, I'm sorry, but I have a strategy that works.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I go to CS, and the first thing I ask the initial implementers is, who would you need to talk to at this company and why? For them to actually enjoy it, what would need to happen? What is that first big win they need, and how short of a time do we have?
Mhm.
Okay, what would make this implementation fail? What are some like 2 or 3 things that you could see getting in the way that I need to get answered to either manage or minimize? What are
Mhm.
they? And then what I would do is I'd go to the CSM because it's hilarious that we don't have full cycle anymore. And so the person that made the promises isn't the person that delivers, nor are they the person that services the account. So then I'd go to the CSM and I would ask, why do people renew? So not the initial commit, but what secures that ongoing?
Mhm.
And so there's my prioritization. So I'd go and now make my assumptions. So I have my research, and now I'll go build my assumptions for testing. So what
Mhm.
did I assume about the problem that they're experiencing? So I take 3. What did I assume about the solution for those problems? I'd list 3. And then what I do is I take what I learned from the CS and about what is the reality of implementation and them seeing the value that we promised them. And I list 3. Then what I do is I find the 10 people that we need to know we exist that can answer those questions.
Mm.
And I start depending on how much background knowledge I have in either that industry, in that like the horizontal, like that function of the company, I'll either start in the trenches or at management. If I have a lot of background information, I just start with management and work my way up or out. But what I'm trying to do is get them to give me yes or no's and give me numbers. Because what I'm
Mhm.
building in my head is I take 3 numbers as my investment ROI. So if they gave me $100,000, how long would it take for them to break even on on this investment? And what is their average annual return based on the criteria I set? So I'm actually using those 9 different questions to tease out my investment, almost like if you were to go and buy a stock or a bond. And then what I do is the 10th person is that person that filled out the form. My
Mm.
goal is to not have to reach out to them for someone to introduce me.
Mhm.
And so all I do is based on my background knowledge and my comfort talking to different people and whose shoes I've been in, I'll go reach out. So in this case, I would have been like, okay, so I don't really know a lot about this IT's world. I'm techie and nerdy and I like to go and code and break stuff. but I don't know enough. Okay, who could I find? So what I would even do is go on Sales Navigator. I'd go current account. I would list the functions that I haven't can meaningfully impact with my solution. And what I'll do is something a little cheeky. I'll search a shared interest and I'll make sure it's in my profile.
Mhm.
So beer is my go-to. And I'll do craft beer, lambic, something that if you know, you know.
Yeah.
Audiophile or
You know what's
things that
funny?
that's
I think
it's
that's how
like,
we connected. I literally
probably.
was like, "Hi, you look very cool, but also, do you
Yes,
like
it
craft
was.
beer?" Mhm.
Because
And
I
then I
listened
literally
to your
listened to
J-Bay
your
podcast and I'm
stories.
like, you say you like beer,
Yeah.
but do you actually? Like, I think I teased you about like, everybody says they like craft beer, but I think that is exactly what it was.
Yeah, so I love that I'm hearing a few things. I'm hearing also, I think when a lot of times we handle these situations, we literally are just taking the approach of like, "Hey, just following up on this. Did you ever get," just following up. What I'm hearing from you is really breaking that pattern and come with valuable questions. Not only with value, but like super valuable, important questions. I would want that VP to be like other people in the organization to be like, wait, so like who is this? Like we really need to meet with them. And the VP's like, oh, actually, yeah, I submitted that form. Yeah. I like I almost want him to like fight for credit for that, you know?
And the one thing I don't think we realize when we're prospecting is we're talking to a senior decision maker that owns a P&L. They have to sign off on something and they have to go and sacrifice something else to do what you want them to do.
Hmm.
So what are the numbers? Because that's what they have to focus on when you're living in the future. Because most directors are hired live in the future. Sometimes some are a year, some are more. That you need to paint the picture of what that story is going to look like together. And if
Hmm.
you don't have proof, if you don't know their internal jargon, if you don't know what's going on, like what are the past initiatives and some of the things they're working on, why would they listen to you? You haven't done your homework. It would be like a trial lawyer walking into a judge asking to go and hear his case. And he's like, "Oh, submit your case. I'll figure it out on the stand." But who are you going to talk to? "Oh, I'll figure it out as we go." And it's stressful. And because we don't have that forethought and we're not mapping out how this potentially could play out, it's super stressful. And I had a seller say to me last week, and it really hit home. I was telling him that your competitive advantage isn't your product. There's too many lookalikes. It's in your
Hmm.
list and the market knowledge that you have from prioritizing that list. And what
And
he
your
said to
sales
me,
strategy. Don't forget the mid funnel, Nicholas. I know that you're all like, this is another question. What is the best part of sales? It is not prospecting.
that's
Prospecting
only
is
because you've never had an alley oop
definitely
before.
prospecting. But the best part of sales is discovery. And so it's interesting though, like what I see a lot of times is people are just very reactive within deals, right? Like whoever answers the email, however it goes, like we need to be proactive and really know that like I need this in order to have this close, even have a chance. And I think this is some of like the things that have come up here. It's like in order to have a chance with this prospect, this seller really needs to know the details and get that support from his team. But I'm also hearing like we need to moving forward, we shouldn't also just be reactive because it doesn't seem like this. What are we reacting to? There's nothing here, right? But we can turn this around by really treating this like a priority account and by mapping it out, like you said, not only mapping out, I love what you mentioned around not only mapping out those people, which I think a lot of people do. A lot of people think that they just can send like a message to the right people, but you have to have like right person, right time, right message. And I love what you're saying. Really, like those synchronicities, those common interests, the little things that you notice, on top of some super valuable, impactful questions.
It just makes all the difference. And honestly, to me, going back to what that seller said to me, they're like, I realize the only reason I say I'm just following up is I'm just trying to do the activity.
Yeah.
But if when we switched to knowing the strategy, I
Yeah.
wasn't just following up. It was important. I had to clarify something because really what I was doing was
Mhm.
qualifying the investment or qualifying if the deal was even worth it to them. And he said that it just changed everything. But yeah, do your research. If you're not really sure why they should do the deal, go on G2, look at the 2-star, 3-star, and 4-star reviews and see what people loved and what people wish was there. Go on to like a market report, try to understand that company, get some background knowledge. Another one is go on your company website if they have case studies, search if there's a case study in that industry and try to don't just cut out the propaganda bullshit. Anything that your company is saying, just erase it. It's useless. Go and look at the actual quotes from the people that were in the deal and see if you can decipher a few of those to find some nuggets. And then all I do is I take that, I use that to go and set out my plan, and I just go. And what the thing I also look for is for implementation, if this was to work, based on the scale of that implementation, who do I need to involve and when? So if I'm doing a full enterprise deal with,
Mhm.
1,000 plus headcount and I'm doing the whole org,
Mhm.
I'm going to be building my all-star team from almost day one because I need to get them started long before it's closed.
Mm.
But if it's only one division and I might only get 5 or 6 licenses, I can carry it right to the end and pull them in just before it's signed. So but it's a good way when you're like you were saying team selling. That's also a great way to do team selling because if you're sharing that discovery and you're using that as your like you're quarterbacking this deal, then everybody's just adding bits and pieces. So at the end of the day, you have this beautiful puzzle that tells the whole story.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I do wanna go back to the creativity piece as well, because I've been thinking about it, and I do think that also, like, a little humor can go a long way. It seems like this seller has, like, reached out, they've done a lot, and so I do think that, like, creativity can be key, especially with top prospects. One thing I wanna talk about with creativity, if you are a salesperson and you have top prospects, especially if you're enterprise, like, if you're, like, a strategic salesperson, where is your budget? What I'm saying, I would be asking for budget for, like, if you're saying this is top prospect that we have to land, I'm gonna be asking for some budget. Literally invest in those. Not only invest time, literally invest energy, money, invest the teamwork. Like, I think a lot of salespeople are afraid to really like own their territory. Like, treat it. Being a business owner has taught me so much. Not good at every role, but I wish that more salespeople treated, and enablement folks, right? Like, treated their job like a business owner, right? Like, if these are your goals, you need to make some investments. So, what I mean by that is even a small investment could go a long way. And I am not talking about $5 Starbucks cards. I probably have an entire inbox of $5 Starbucks cards, something meaningful. So I'll give you a few examples. Um, so one time we were trying to get into Nike, and our marketing team literally sent them. They had like a new shoe that they were launching, and they sent them a cake. They said they showed the photo, and I was like, "Did you just send them their shoe?" And they're like, "No, Megan, that is a cake." I'm like, like literally, it was like what that show like Cake or No Cake or something. Just getting creative like that, like, does land deals. Another really creative thing is, this doesn't work for every type of industry, but, my last company, we did email marketing, and one of the things that worked extremely well was figuring out some super strong hypotheses around, "Hey, these are 5 things that I would like to explore with you, 5 ideas that I have for you." That is a gift. Literally saying, like, we would actually mock up, "Hey, this is your email today. These are just some ideas I had for what your email could look like in a year. by using, and I might totally be off of the mark, but like let me know if any of these ideas resonate. We would literally so I my very first BDR that I trained, we we chose a top account. It was Burt's Bees. We did that strategy. We got really specific around, like, again, to your point, researching, forming hypotheses around what we think could be valuable, and especially hypotheses around like what questions we want to explore with them. Mocked it into an email, literally one email close, like got the meeting. So when it comes to investment, also stop doing the bare minimum for top accounts. Everyone, marketing, sales leadership, salespeople, like really rely on your team and the resources at your disposal. And also sometimes we got to fight for resources. But it also starts with what you said, which is prioritizing our accounts. Like we should know that these are top leads. We should be really rallying with our internal go-to-market teams, not so we just get like, hey, here's a layup, here's a submission. Like we didn't even know that they were kind of like, like we should be really actively targeting together.
I That's a great story. Actually, as you were talking, you made me think of one that I had, and what I always
Yeah.
focused on was the manager, the director. What would Who would get the call in the middle of the night if that process failed,
Mm,
and what would be fireable? At the end of the day, there is no hiding from it. Like they have to deal with it. So I can't say the company name, but if you've bought gas
mhm.
in Canada, and so we were working on this energy services downhole tool company,
Mhm,
and there was this new technology that allowed them to access resources and reservoirs that they couldn't previously, but without having to spend a bunch of money, they could go back to existing wells, which is what they were trying to
mhm,
do because the oil had crashed and they were trying to find cheap ways to go and access money. And so what I did, I'm like, well, shit, who would get in trouble for this? What would be the issue? And I'm like, well, if they lost the oil, but they know it's
mm,
there, it would be bad. So what I did is I bought engine oil and a mason jar, and I took a map, like a plot map for that rural area, cut out just the piece that I needed, and I put a star on it of where that well site was, and put it in a
mhm.
plastic bag, put it inside the mason jar, put the oil in, and then close it. And I put their name, and I said, I think you lost this.
Oh my
And I sent
goodness,
it,
I
and I
love
dropped
it.
it off at the office. And I got a call instantly and said, how
Yeah,
the hell do you know that this is ours? And I was like,
yeah,
I actually know a little bit more than that. Would you like to meet? And I can go and tell you everything that I
yeah.
have, and you're welcome to poke holes in it, or you can tell me to screw off. It's up to you. Just and it,
Now, I have a question though,
mhm.
because you and I, we could geek out all day on literally like the most creative things we've done for sales. Like, but one of the biggest objections I get from salespeople is, Meg, I don't have time to do all of that research for every account. Like, I don't have time to spend all of that, like, to spend like hours and hours on each prospect. Like,
Hours.
how, how would you answer that?
If you're not busy doing your job, what are you busy doing? You're probably just busy going through the motions and trying to hit
Yeah.
volume, which is a waste of time. So if we actually look
Okay,
at
makes
life, well,
sense.
you know what? I hear it every week and I get it in my DMs, and it's so frustrating because everybody says, well, I'm too busy. You're too busy because you're not
Oh,
effective. And if we
yeah.
switch to what is the highest return on effort, we all have the same amount of time. What is actually
Mm,
that makes you a buck? What actually gets you recognized for the good work you do? And what puts buyers first and appreciate you for the good work you do? It's research and
yeah.
coming with a point of view. But going in blind is a waste of everyone's time. And I feel bad saying it, and it's really frustrating. But David, thanks for joining us, David.
Yeah.
But right?
Everyone at the Apple Store.
But like even so going to the Apple store, it's an experience. If Apple wouldn't have done
Yeah.
their research before to go and have an experience that educated somebody through the process or made them feel a certain way, it would be disconnected and people would be wondering why they're spending the extra money. But
Mhm.
if we go and put that little extra in, then you shouldn't be targeting your all. If you have 100 accounts, realistically, by the numbers, only 2 or 3 need you right now. And so if you
Yeah.
prioritize your list, you should only be actively pursuing 2 or 3 to activate them. All the rest, you should be warming up and establishing yourself in that market so they look at you as a credible resource. So when the time comes, you have an open door to reach out. But nobody gives sales enough room. And if you think of the average cold caller, they're not cold calling, they're telemarketing. There's no insight. So it's not sales, it's marketing. They're just trying to get attention, which attention and awareness are really important. But if there's no
Mhm.
credibility, it's like posting on social media for views. Yeah, it might feel good, but it doesn't do anything. You don't get paid for impressions unless you're an influencer. We're not influencers, we're sellers.
Speak for yourself. I'm a hella influencer.
Yes, your posts do better than
Okay.
mine, but you don't have to rub it in my face.
Okay, so also this is why I love conversations with you. Y'all, I think this is like 90% of me and Nick's conversations privately is me pushing back on him and be like, "Can we have a little bit of compassion, please?" So, I have a little bit different perspective. Um, for me, I think that the reason why like, I agree with everything you said in terms of, like, salespeople have let's say you have 100
Oh, can I
accounts.
make one caveat to
There's
this before you go and
yeah.
shred me? It's not their fault, it's bad culture.
Yeah,
It's their manager and
yes.
how they're tracking them, and they're focusing
Mhm,
on task management instead of project management. They're focused on the useless activities that mean nothing,
mhm,
not focusing on
yes,
actual results that, generate revenue and profitable
yeah,
business.
and I wanna tell you why as well, because one thing you said earlier was, like, salespeople saying, "I'm too busy to, like, do the work," and I'm like, okay, I'm a sales trainer because I'm very lazy. I don't wanna do any extra effort. I wanna get to, like, the top of performance as fast as possible, and I learned very quickly that is not spinning your wheels, not knowing what you're doing, like, it's investing in yourself as well and your own strategy because it's easier. Um, but one thing that I also see is, saying, like, I think a lot of people are super stressed because we are operating based on these conversion rates, like, the open rates and conversion rates within, different channels of all these things, and also conversion rates by stage. And it's funny because why our activity metrics are usually so high, aka like why there's so much pressure on salespeople to do more activities is because they don't work. And it's this like this cycle of like, okay, the activities aren't working, do more of them. And so we have this like incredibly crazy expectations for salespeople to hit these activity metrics. And one of the things that I work on with my clients, my one-on-one coaching clients in sales, is not caring as much and knowing that like this is going to be very different if you increase your efficiency and like effectiveness. It's hella important. And one of the things that you said, one of the biggest reasons I think that relates to this conversation is that theme of prioritization. Most salespeople, and this is kind of crazy to me, a lot of salespeople, especially people that are given lists that don't have to think through the territory, like define their territory. The second session I do in my one-on-one coaching clients is literally creating account tiers and prospecting tiers. As you mentioned, if you have 100 accounts, you should absolutely be able to tell me what are your top 5? What is the strategy for your top 5? Because that's gonna be absolutely different than, like, the bottom of your list. I had one of, this incredible seller on my last team who literally just used, like, an open field. Sales ops did not delete this field because they knew that she used it. Literally just to, like, tier her she just said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And she was like, okay, tier one, my top prospects. These are the ones that like my BDR and I are working on together, but like I'm taking the lead. I'm literally asking marketing for resources. I'm asking like all of these people for help. I'm dedicating the most time and energy to these accounts. It is easier to be less busy if you're spending your time in the right places, which should be on the prospects and the deals that actually have a possibility of closing and that actually are highly qualified, right time, right place, right message, like all of those things. And I think that's why so many people are busy because they're spending their time just kind of like reactively and in the wrong places. Literally, if anyone takes anything from this call, prioritize your territory.
I'm gonna
Even if you start with just 5 accounts, literally what are your top 5 and
I want to
why?
give you a little pushback, only because
Mm,
when me and Morgan first started, I tried to figure out tiering structures. I read
mhm,
every frickin' sales book you could possibly imagine. I listened to podcasts, I watched YouTube, and nobody ever actually said a tiering structure. I have a tiering structure, but I go a little bit differently. So
mhm.
I have my deals that I'm already work like my customers. I have my deals that there's either a trigger or they've opted in. They've raised their hand
Mm,
asking for help. And then I have the ones that fit my sandbox, but I'm just warming up. How do
yeah,
you tier? And I think it's so important because
yeah,
nobody talks about how to go and do territory planning. Nobody talks about how to go and
no
set a
one, people just
budget. They just say, "Here, let's work on our messaging to justify this useless list that there's no reason that I should have it in the first place." But when we take this
yeah,
proactive step, we're actually doing our job to go and provide a real service to our companies because now it's no longer spam, it's a prescription. So how do you tier?
yeah, yeah, so, and I wanna ask like, I'm gonna cover tiering. I also would love I'm curious for you, one question I had is, like, around segmentation, but let me tell you how I tier first because it's super intertwined, and I love the smile that you just got, literally, like, geeking out on segmentation already, dude. You're so weird. But how I help my clients tier their accounts, and also I wanna be frank, like, there's a big difference between people who have an open territory. Like when I was selling payroll in Florida, it was like you have the Southwest, like anything that's not like in or the Southeast, like anything that's not in Salesforce, like you can have. That is super overwhelming. It's almost more important than to tier because you're basically figuring out like what are the elements of accounts that should be on my list. Um, and I'm going to tell you a story in a minute about that. But there's also a lot of account executives that I work with that are working at larger companies that are a little bit more advanced, um, which isn't always good because usually they then get a list. You get 100 accounts, however, 30, 15 accounts, right? It is critical for you to understand that not all of those accounts should be treated equally.
Amen.
So there are literally the thing is like ask yourself first. First question, account tiering exercise. What are the 5 biggest factors that lead to a qualified opportunity? It could be like, how do I know if it's gonna be a big deal, right? It could be the number of employees. It could be the email list size. It could be even like the finances of the company. Are you going after public or private companies? What size, like how can you determine what would actually like lead to having healthy budget? Um,
Can I give one little quick push to that?
yeah.
I had a weird coincidence with one of the companies I was selling for that the largest deals were the smallest deals because they always did a pilot, but the pilots always
Mhm.
stretched. And so it was the larger SMBs were actually my biggest deal size. And they closed in
Mhm.
less than 14 days. So I would
Ooh,
throw those enterprise deals in, but I wouldn't focus
yeah.
on them because they're a waste of my energy if I gave them too much attention. So be careful of looking at your
Yeah.
deal size and what people actually buy initially, or else basically you're handing it off to CSM or someone else to go and make money on expansion and you're just getting screwed.
That's a really good point as well, because that's another factor. What does not make a good prospect? And in another aspect of what you just said is this should be a consistent and like conscious feedback loop. You should form almost like the first time you do your account tiering, it should just be some hypotheses. So, for example, even when I have new sellers that I work with, the first thing I do is I'm like, hey, like usually they don't have their full territory list. So I just ask their manager, can you just give me 5 accounts? Literally just 5 accounts to play with. The very first exercise I ask them to do is, hey, can you just rank these and tell me why? And honestly, that can be a really good exercise with your manager as well. Because if you say, hey, I'm doing exercise, I'm doing a little bit of account tiering, especially if you're new to the role and you don't have as much of that context or those lessons, literally asking them, this is the way I'm thinking about prioritizing. This is what I'm thinking about putting in my top five. What do you think about that? Any thoughts or like pushback here? Because they can also give you a little bit of that added context. Oh, actually, I tried to reach out to that prospect. Like, this isn't in Salesforce. I forgot to put it in, but we tried reaching out to them like for 6 years and we've literally never gotten anything. Like, maybe not. But yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go in. For example, do they have, do we know that they're using technology that we integrate with, that we partner with? Have they ever engaged with you? The level of engagement. Have they ever responded? Are there like literally, are there past opportunities? High, high, high target prospect, you know? So really think about what those factors are. Get it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You can also switch them out, as you kind of think about, like, as you get some engagement, things like that. Timing is another one that you mentioned. Like, you might actually update your list every season, depending on, for example, retail. Maybe they have like Black Friday, and if you're in the middle of Black Friday, maybe they're not going to be able to engage with you. So really thinking about like your list as a conscious, like, but also a continuously changing set of targets is key.
Could not agree more. And yeah, that timing is so critical because even if the house is burning down, they may not have the opportunity to do anything about it. They're just fending off the flames until they finish the other important task.
Yeah. The final thing I wanted to mention as well is not only on the prioritization of targets, but also there's an aspect of segmentation as well,
Yes.
which we could talk about all day, but like I definitely think about that for situations like this as well, where like even if we're trying to figure out what is our prospecting strategy, what is our outreach strategy, what is our strategy, even like the way, for example, one thing you mentioned earlier is like you don't have to treat every prospect the same as well. You just mentioned like enterprise deals you handle very differently. I do one-to-one sales coaching and also have deals that are in the hundreds of thousands. Those are obviously very different sales strategies, and even the entire approach is different. So I think that's the thing, that the big pushback I get is like with deals like this that are like top targets is like, I don't have the time to do this for every account. We're not asking you to. And
I got a
all we're
story
asking
about
you to do is
this.
for top accounts, and to make it even easier, segment your targets. For example, retail, like figure out what makes a good segment and how can you actually repurpose content, gifts, value. Even for example, one of the things that came out of the prospecting rally that I was talking about is marketing was like, actually, we have 3 top targets in this one segment, and we actually don't really have a lot of like events or content for them. Let's actually do a round table with just this segment and like invite people.
Beautiful.
Yeah, segmentation works. Does not have to be like what I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'm just going to spend hours on this one prospect. Repurpose your time, repurpose your energy, repurpose everything.
Amen.
Yeah.
I uh I had a happy accident when I was in investment banking. And so I had a customer when I had left that had come back and asked in between me doing turnaround work if I would find some acquisition targets for them. And so they gave me some kind of generic list, unfortunately. But I reached out to some of the professors that knew that industry really well, and I asked them, why do most acquisitions fail? What about that post acquisition makes it fail? And so they gave me some criteria, and it led to a segment based on 5 different points. Did they have a certain role? What was their headcount growth? How was their finances? And how did they have these roles in finance? So they gave me some pretty specific things. And I realized as I started reaching out to these companies and looking at these companies one after another, after another, that you see weird things that you wouldn't normally see because you're not targeting the same segment. So
Mhm,
I would just reach out and ask. I'm like, it's interesting. I've looked at 15 other companies in your industry and nobody has this one thing you have on your profile or way you do things.
mhm,
Why? What am I missing? And it was super interesting because they would be like, "Oh, actually, well, we learned from this," and they would respond because it was curiosity. But I would have never seen that. And so what I started to do was create a cheat sheet per segment of the things I learned.
mhm.
And then I realized that instead of wasting my time targeting one account, I could target 10, 20, or 30 that look the same.
Yeah.
And if you only win 10%, you're doing great. And then I got a little cheeky after a while when I got to more strategic deals is make them I'd make only pick one. So I'd
Mhm.
pick the top 5 in the industry. I'd find a public company that had brilliant analysts that are a lot better at their jobs than me, and I would just look at how they were looking at companies and how they were analyzing it and the questions they had to clarify from the marketing BS they put on their investor calls, and I could even reach out to them. So I would use that investor relations info as my criteria, and I would
Always.
act like almost like a venture capitalist or like a private equity firm, and I would be like, "Well, why would this be worth buying? Why would this be worth investing in?"
Mhm.
And then they would once they heard I was talking to another company and I was only gonna take one in that segment, and I listed out the segment, they're like, "Holy crap." I'm like, "Yeah, I know you're the top player, but you don't really have these things, so I don't think it would actually be the biggest bet for you. This other one actually has this, this, and this, which I know for implementation, they're going to see success faster. So, you guys would end up having to spend more money to get where they're at already." And it
Yeah.
was super interesting because I was referencing another company. They're like, "Oh, well, could you do some consulting on that and help us get there before we go and buy this?" And it's just because you were talking about the market, not about your company. You're talking about what their life looks like, what their business looks
Yeah.
like. But you would never know unless you're looking at enough of the same
Yeah.
company.
Well, dude, I'm hearing so many good things. I know we are, again, kind of fluctuating between strategic and situational. So I do want to highlight a few things that like I heard, and leave with like one final idea that I had in terms of like how to move forward. So I'm definitely hearing from you, if this is a top account, like we need to be able to know a lot more. There are no excuses. Honestly, even as a lazy person, like there's no excuses because doing more research and better understanding those top accounts makes everything easier, right? And also, they're top accounts for a reason. If we can activate them, it's literally gonna like doing one top account and really focusing your energy there. It's going to be a lot easier than some of my clients who start with working on like 50 or 60 ops at a time, right? Getting that down to 5 or 6, critical. So I'm hearing target more people in this account. Don't just reach out to the VP. And I know this person is, but like also not only just, following up, but really leading with value, leading with those, challenger questions, the industry knowledge, the really important questions that you're literally asking yourself in them. Make sure it's value centric. And I also want to bring in like the creativity thing. So for me, I love the idea of, the send them a fruit basket. One idea that I was thinking of was, if this person was like, I'd never sent the email, I think you could also kind of play around with that and like send something ghost themed. Like you could literally have like little ghost cupcakes or something, be like, hey, I think your office might be haunted. We actually got this online form. And maybe it honestly is a friendly ghost. Maybe this ghost knows something that, your team isn't necessarily like, has been really thinking about, and it actually knew that we were a good fit. Like these are a few reasons and a few questions that we have. Like, um, thank your friend Casper the Friendly Ghost for us for making this introduction. Like have some playfulness with it. But that would be my kind of like fun way of managing this one. Would love to hear final takeaways from anyone else in terms of like what y'all think. And
While
Nick.
we're waiting for everyone to chime in the comments there, one thing I've seen happen is the person that that VP trusts has access to their accounts, and they were doing research for them and they didn't know. So one of the things I would have done is called the front office and I would ask them, I was like, hey, if so and so would have been looking into this, who would they have delegated it to go and do the research? Because we got an email and I'm not sure it's actually from this person, and I just don't want to waste their time.
Yeah, I
So
love
there
that.
you're validating right off the bat. And then going back to what you said, go on a road trip. Think about when you go on a road trip with the VP being the final stop, the destination. Who are you going to bring on that road trip with you that's going to make it more fun? What are the different stops you're going to do to go and learn more and have experiences? And don't forget a great playlist.
Absolutely. Well, honestly, I'm excited for the next few sessions. Final things. Next week, we are going to be focusing on another anonymous deal. So if you want your own deal, your own prospect to be featured here, like we've shown, hopefully, we have a lot of tactical things. We have a lot of tactical advice, strategic advice. You can give us as much deal as you want so we can really dive deep. But we would love to hear from y'all. Send us a DM. It's just a quick questionnaire, and we might ask you a few follow-up questions. But we'll be booking the next few shows, and we hope to see you there.
Hey, quick, can you give us a teaser? You haven't even told me what is the next deal. Can you give me a like a just a little like
I don't
little
even know
clue?
what it is yet. I don't know what it is yet,
Ooh.
but it is one of my favorite. Oh my gosh, I don't have any favorite clients. They're all my favorite clients, but it's one of my favorite clients. Okay, and she has a lot of different deals that she's been working on. So we're going to pick one together. But it's exciting too because we're going to have someone who is already working with a sales coach. You would think that, everything's perfect if you already have a sales coach, but I'm excited because it's going to be a challenge for me. So we'll see. But let us know if you have a deal. We're excited to jump into them with you.
Shoot
And
us a
if
DM.
yeah, final thing, if you need a little bit more help, if you are, liking the ideas you hear today, you can always reach out to me or Nick. I'm Meg Mishak. I do work with organizations as well as with individuals, um, a few at a time, to really help people work through a lot of these issues, to helping you become a lazy salesperson who can take all the vacation they want because they are absolutely hitting their goals, exceeding them, top of the leadership board, and also feeling really good about the way you sell. Nick, how can people work with you?
Same thing what you said. If you haven't been on a vacation in a while because you've been scared about your manager or their boss's boss, we work with companies to go and help make prospecting easier so that you have a healthy top of funnel and you're not the scapegoat of bad business anymore. So shoot us a DM, go to b2bpowerhour.com, and just want to say thank you for staying here and watching us. And thank you, Meg, for doing this. Cannot wait to see you guys next week.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone.